So we're back for our 13th live event. You're very welcome to NCBI Labs this week. We have plenty of subjects still to cover. And this week, as the country opens up a little bit more and people are getting back to work, maybe it's a good time to talk about the challenges that people with vision loss face when in the workplace. More specifically, maybe what can help to overcome those challenges. And we'll talk about the part that technology has in that as well. We're going to have an opportunity to talk about that a little bit later on in the show. And we have a really interesting interview as well that just ties in with that nicely. NCBI service user Jennifer Healion talks about how technology has helped her in her life, both in school and in college, but also in the workplace as well. And that'll tie in nicely to our discussion of technology in the workplace as well. And I'm sure you'll find that really interesting, that interview, and seeing it your way. But on top of that, in just a few moments, we're bringing back the tech news slot this week. On the back of some developments with Apple last week, some announcements about the latest versions of their operating system. Well, we're going to have a chance to chat about that in just a few moments as well. And of course, to help us to do that, we need a panel, because otherwise you're going to have to listen to me talking to myself, and nobody wants that. So to save you from such torture, we have our panel regulars with us, Sean Doran, JP Corcoran and Daniel Dunn. So we'll be delighted to welcome them as well. Just a reminder that if you have any comments throughout our show today, any questions, anything that you'd like to contribute, please do send them in. You can use the question panel on the right hand side of the screen if you're tuning into Teams, if you're tuning in live, or you can send us through an email to labs@ncbi.ie. And if you do that while the show is on, we'll certainly try and get an answer to that. If you have a question, if you're listening back to this on YouTube perhaps, or another platform afterwards, then please do send in your questions anyway to labs@ncbi.ie, and we'll try and make sure that we get to your questions on our next live event, and we'll provide an answer for that as well. And if you'd like to support our services so that we can continue to provide services to those who are blind or vision impaired, you can do that by visiting donate.ncbi.ie. So that's donate.ncbi.ie, or you can even sponsor one of our live events. And again, you can get in touch with us on our labs email address, labs@ncbi.ie, if you'd like to do that. Now, before we just kick off with our tech news this week, we just want to get back to a question that we had from last week. You might remember last week we discussed the Cat B35 phone. We were also talking about accessible gaming, which we kind of enjoyed that conversation as well. We got to reminisce about our different experiences in the gaming world. But you might remember when we were talking about the Cat B35 phone, there was a question just in relation to whether it would talk back to you using the internet, which it will, and that was answered last week, but using email as well, which we just wanted to make sure that we tested properly to make sure we were giving the right information out. Well, you'll be happy to know that Derek has gone away. He's tested that feature during the week, and he can confirm that definitely will talk back to you using the email as well. Now, it's not the fastest, but we mentioned that on the show last week, that considering the price of the device, it kind of sits in a nice little niche there. If you want a phone that has physical buttons, it has some of the most common smartphone apps. It'll even talk back to you and use Google Assistant. Well, this is pretty good for a low price, but it is basically in that budget realm. So it's not the fastest necessarily with some of the talkback options, including with email, but it does work quite well. So that's just to get back to that subject last week, and we hope that's answered that question for you as well. Now we're going to move on this week to some of the announcements from Apple last week. So we're thinking about their announcements regarding iOS 14 and some of their other announcements as well. We'll welcome in our panel for this. Particularly, Sean has been looking at some of the announcements here, but the whole panel is welcome to jump in at any point throughout the conversation here. Now, Apple have these announcements kind of down to a fine art form, really. They hold their annual WWDC, or Worldwide Developers Conference, each year, and they announce a ream of kind of new developments. Sean, I didn't know. Did anybody else know this, by the way, already? I never knew this. I've only ever seen WWDC. When I'm reading up on an article, I see it listed as that. I read up something just as I was looking, sort of researching for this. Did you know what its nickname was, Sean, already? Have you heard what its nickname is?
No, what's the nickname?
Apparently it's called Dub Dub. Colloquially, it's called Dub Dub. I've never heard of that before at all, but apparently this is Dub Dub 20. So
I haven't heard that one.
So if you're hearing that highly technical term at any point,
that's in the die-hard Apple community.
That's it. Yeah. So WWDC or Dub Dub 20. So just tell us, Sean, what were some of the announcements last week's event?
There's lots of announcements in terms of iOS 14, but I'll just jump straight to the voiceover section first, and then I'll skip back over some of them, because there's a few interesting developments in voiceover which I can't wait to try. So there's going to be, in-device intelligence built into voiceover, where that's going to help us with apps and web pages with elements that are not accessible. So I can't wait to try that. So that's going to hopefully, try its best to label buttons or elements that might be not labeled, or, make them more accessible. So I'm not entirely sure how that's going to be implemented, but as soon as I'm able to download iOS 14, I can't wait to actually try that.
Yeah, that'll be really interesting.
Other things that I've added to into VoiceOver is it's going to allow for image description. So even images that are not described, it's going to basically use AI to tell you what's in those images.
Yeah.
So that'll be another thing. I wonder how good that will be. And that will also read text within an image. I know things like JAWS and other AI applications are currently doing this, but nothing so native as within the screen reader itself in terms of mobile devices. So hopefully now when we swipe over an image, whether that's like on Facebook or Twitter, because people often share images like memes and stuff with text in them.
Yeah.
So we'd have to save them, export them to Seeing AI to get them to read on our phone. So now natively within VoiceOver, it will give a description of that text. So that's going to be very useful, and I can't wait to see how that's implemented.
Yeah.
And it's supposed
really
to.
Yeah.
And they've announced that it's going to have a feature within VoiceOver. It's going to detect interface controls within apps. So that might be play buttons, rewind, fast forwards. That might make them easier to get to in an app that mightn't be laid out as well as we've come to expect with certain apps. So yeah. I can't wait to try those features within VoiceOver. So there's a lot of good changes coming for VoiceOver.
So that's quite significant, actually. If they kind of turn out the way that they've been announced and they work as we expect them to work, that's quite significant in terms of accessibility.
Would it be that iOS are catching up with Android here, with their select to speak feature, where that can actually read text on images for the last 2 years or thereabouts?
Yeah, well, it's a similar feature, but this is completely incorporated into VoiceOver. So it's as you swipe and land on the image, it should give you all those details rather than having to export it or use a different program. So I will be interested to see how that's fully implemented. But
I did hear as well that just kind of even outside of some of the accessibility features, it was a little bit of a case of Apple catching up with Android and a few other things as well, wasn't it?
There was a lot of people saying things like that. Some of the changes that are coming are things like being able to add widgets to your home screen.
Yeah.
Apple are going to call it an app library, which is similar to Android's app drawer, where you can basically, within the app library, it can be sorted by categories. Mm-hmm. So it'd be like that category could be most often used, or could be gaming apps, it could be connectivity apps, it could be browsers. Whatever way you want to sort them, you can sort them, as well as creating your own I know people often create their own folders on their desktop anyway, on their homepage.
Yeah.
So this is a more integrated feature that's similar to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. And any other kind of particularly significant?
There's a very interesting new mode called back tap.
Okay.
It might be only available on like the iPhone 10 onwards, but what back tap is tapping the back of the phone, whether it's a double tap or a triple tap, you can activate certain features of the phone. So what people are talking about doing is, obviously Siri's the default voice assistant, but you might maybe tap the back of the phone twice to bring up Google Assistant.
Okay.
Or people with dexterity issues, like I know the three finger double tap, for magnifying the screen can often be difficult for people with dexterity issues. So you could map it that tapping the back of the phone twice with one finger would turn on the zoom feature within the phone. So there's a certain amount of things you can set the back tap to with either a triple tap or a double tap. So you have two options on the back, but you can map Siri commands to it. So even if that feature wasn't there, you could set a Siri command that when you double tap the back of the phone, it will then do a Siri command, which will then do the thing you want to do. So it's giving people lots of scope. It's a new shortcut. It could really help people, especially with dexterity issues.
Yeah, yeah.
And even just as an extra shortcut, maybe people find without a home button, it's harder to turn on and off VoiceOver. So maybe triple tapping the back of the phone now would be a lot easier for people.
It'd be interesting to see the different applications of that, actually, because I'd say that's one of those ones that, as people use it in everyday life, they'll come up with ways of using that feature that will be quite interesting to see.
Absolutely, and I think that's one that I am looking forward to try. But the caveat there is it's probably only going to be available on, the iPhone 10 and above. I'm not even still sure how the feature works. So, will having a case affect it?
Yes, yeah. Well,
am I right in saying that the iOS 14, like that's everybody who has got or been invited to install iOS 13 is also going to get to iOS 14 when it comes out?
I think the lowest it'll go is it 6 or 6S?
6S, I think I've read, and I think some of the older SEs as well. The old SE might be included there.
Yeah, but like I was saying, those features with the back tap wouldn't be on that, but definitely all the VoiceOver improvements should be there. And then like you're saying with similar things to Android is like you can add widgets to the screen now. So a widget might be like a weather app, or it might be a different clock, or it could be you could have your favorite messaging app there as a widget, and you could quickly check incoming messages.
That's kind of been a long time coming in a way, hasn't it? It's like
people
maybe people would be quite used to, but
people are quite used to it on other devices. And
Google search bar.
You could probably add it in Google search bar, maybe, if Apple allowed that as a widget. But what's useful about the Apple widgets is because sometimes they do come out with clever ideas, and you can stack the widgets. Yeah. So you can put two widgets, so you could have a weather widget stacked on top of, just say, your messaging widget, and then if you're using VoiceOver, if you swipe through the screen and you land on that widget, it'll tell you the weather. And then while on that, you can swipe up, which will then change it to its secondary widget.
Interesting, yeah. So
you're actually saving space on the screen by stacking these widgets. Yeah. So whether you're using VoiceOver or you're actually, low vision, those features can be useful because you're putting all your widgets in one place, or you're putting it in a place that might be useful to you. Yeah. And then there is other things like I said, we were discussing the app library there, which is similar to the Android app drawer, where you might not want pages and pages of apps anymore. So you can have maybe all your apps that you need on one page, or you can have like the folders on one page, and then you can have your app library where all the apps are saved in, because there's apps on the home screen that some people never ever open.
Yeah.
So it's handy, like if you're clearing up that sort of real estate. And then there's other things like there's massive improvements in Siri coming, where often when we do a Siri sort of search and she says, here's web results of that search. Now they're going to have actually more focalized results, so you're not getting a list of web pages. You'll still get them, but Siri should give you more answers than it did before.
It's interesting because as much as we kind of poke fun with the comparisons between Android and Apple, and there are some things that you kind of see maybe one will do first and then the other one kind of follows along, and that it does just tend to happen that way anyway. But Apple's developments, when it does come to accessibility, are always excellent, aren't they?
Yeah, and I'm hoping that Android steal the stacked widgets.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that they steal that one back.
Yeah.
But within Siri now, you can also send audio messages. So you can say, Siri, send an audio message to, and then you can record an audio message, so the person's getting an actual audio message from you rather than Siri dictating it and then voiceover reading it to far side. So that's going to be a useful feature, for anybody. I mean, like I would take advantage of that, certainly, to send a quick voicemail, because we often do that within things like WhatsApp anyway. We'd send a voice recording, so the fact that we can do that straight from Siri through messages is going to be very, very useful. And
I think wasn't there a couple of other developments as well in relation to like some of the sort of sister operating systems, like the iPad OS and the Apple TV OS as well. There was a couple of other things. Various things, there was similar things, but like I was saying there, within messages, we can now add a thing where we can pin conversations to the top. So if there's someone you're constantly chatting to on messages, I think you can pin up to 9 conversations at the top. So whether that's groups or individual people, right? That we can if there's someone you message all the time and like you haven't messaged them in a while, you don't have to swipe through tons of messages to find that conversation. That'll be pinned to the top. Yeah. And Apple have also integrated a translation app into the phone now, so it's going to be like Google Translate.
I like it. I've seen the screenshots of it.
So it does look very good. It could come in very useful. Like I would use the Google Translate app quite a bit. So I'd be interested to see how the Apple version will relate to.
I think they have support for Irish as well.
Yeah, because Google doesn't support. It's supported on the web page, but it doesn't do it through on the app. Yeah.
And they're going to be are they doing Irish from fairly early on in that, like when it's released, when it's starting?
I think it's coming with iOS 14. I think, yeah,
that'll be interesting to some of
it'd be interesting to definitely try. There's some good changes coming to people who use AirPods. So they're adding in spatial audio, which is like basically surround sound. So like when we were talking about gaming last week, having spatial audio in your device will come in really useful, because you'll be getting that full 3D effect. And I mean that, like if you're listening to music and it has tracks mixed with surround sound, it's going to sound really good on your AirPods. And like they'll be adding in augmented reality features too. So whether that's games or if you're using maps, all that can be integrated into the AirPods too.
So when you were saying that about the development with AirPods or AirPods, it's when you're talking about the difference between that and what's there at the moment, is that helping you kind of locate where a sound is? It makes you kind of feel almost more like you're in a room and there's somebody in a fixed position almost. If
you had like a sound system at home and you had speakers behind you and speakers in front of you and some to the side, and you could hear like maybe like you're watching a film, someone could be talking right in front of you, but maybe a sound of a car is coming behind you. So it's replicating those effects in your AirPods. So it'll be very interesting to try that, especially if you like listening to music and if it's mixed with a maybe a 5.1 soundtrack, to see how that will play in your AirPods.
So there's a lot of
portability between devices as well. If you own a few Apple devices, that the AirPods will automatically jump from one to the other if you pick up one.
Yeah, they have added an auto switching option. So if you have your phone in your hand and your AirPods are in, the sound is coming from your phone. If you place the phone down and lift up an iPad, it'll automatically switch to your iPad, and the sound will come out of your iPad then and connect to your AirPods
without having to change any particular settings or anything.
Yeah. So once you lock it in at the start and say these are my 2 devices or 3 devices that are using my AirPods, and they're all Apple devices, it will sync up.
Yeah, very good.
And AirPod have actually added in a notification now, so when your battery starts to get low, you'll get a notification on screen on your phone. So it might say 25% left on your AirPods, and you'll know to give them a quick charge. You don't have to go into the app or check it. It'll tell you on the phone. And there's also headphone accommodation, which they're adding into where I might I mightn't hear mid frequencies or low frequencies, so that they will accommodate to my hearing. So if I struggle maybe to hear soft spoken voices, a soft spoken voice will appear louder when I'm listening to my headphones. So that can all be customized.
Wow, that's quite advanced stuff, really, isn't it?
Yes, there's sort of there's also a big movement for hearing loss in iOS 14. So I know that doesn't really affect us, but there is things where you can set your phone to listen out for maybe fire alarms, or set to listen out for doors knocking, and then you'll get a notification. So some people do have dual sensory loss. So if people are hard of hearing, and also phone user, you could set your phone to listen out for the doorbell, because you might not catch that frequency.
Yeah.
And when the doorbell rings, and your phone will give you a notification. So even if you're a heavy sleeper and you've got your phone near your bed and you have set to look out for a fire alarm, or to set to when a door knocks or raps, there's lots of sounds you can pick from. Your phone could vibrate and you would hear it.
Yeah.
Or you'd feel the vibration. So I mean, there's lots of features.
Really interesting ones. I saw something about as well. Just one of the other features on iOS 14 was to do with accessing a vehicle and starting a vehicle and everything using your phone now.
Yeah, because BMW are the first car company to integrate that with Apple. So your car key is basically programmed into your phone. As you get to the car, it can automatically open, or you can go into the app and open the door and start the engine.
Interesting. Yeah.
But
we're really getting into kind of like tech stuff here.
Because if you lose your phone now, you're losing your car keys and your credit card.
You're losing everything if you're losing your phone these days.
So whoever gets your phone or takes your phone has the added bonus for getting a car with it.
Yeah, exactly. A car comes free.
That's why we multi-factor authentication on our phones. So. Another great thing that actually has been added is changing the default apps, which is something that was never allowed in iOS.
Yeah.
So if you didn't like the Mail app, or you didn't like using Safari as your main browser, you can now set a different default browser or Mail app.
Very good.
That's brilliant.
So a lot of people were using Chrome on their iPhones, but if they got an email link and they went to open it, Safari was opening that link.
Yes.
So now you can set it. Well, actually, I want Chrome to open that.
Yeah,
so that is useful for some people. Some people think the Mail app might be, while very good, might be very basic, and they might want to set a different app as their default one. So there's still lots of rules and regulations about which apps can be. So it's not as if anyone can make an app and that's going to be able to be set as a default. So there is going to be,
and even just with your different browsers and accessibility and everything, they do react differently sometimes. So it's kind of important to have the same environment. And if you're kind of trying to provide support, even sometimes it's quite useful to know that you can select different browsers as the default ones. That's quite a handy one. Just tell us, Sean, when will some of these features, like when is this coming out? When is this due to?
It's due to be released in September.
Okay.
So it's in beta mode now, where people can download and try it. Features might slightly change and not change. I've seen Apple's one of their head fellas being interviewed, and people were saying that when you're using Siri now, it's a small box in the bottom of the screen, but you can't interact with the screen behind it, so why bother showing it? And he says, well, they can do it both ways, but they want to see which way people prefer, so they're quite happy to change things during beta if they get enough feedback.
So still be a few little tweaks and
for most people who wait for the regular updates, that's going to be September.
Okay, so that's when we can expect it through. So that sounds fairly significant news there last week. Some really useful accessibility features as well, and one or two other things that are of interest. So thanks for outlining those for us, Sean. Appreciate that.
No problem.
Thanks to our panel there as well. So we're always kind of interested to see what you think of some of these developments as well. So if you've any comments about those developments, please do let us know. You can email labs@ncbi.ie. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our Seeing It Your Way piece this week, and we're going to do it a little bit differently this week. So normally we'll play the full interview all the way through, but we're going to actually play this in two parts this week, and we're doing that for a particular reason, because Daniel's been talking to Jennifer Healion about her experience using technology throughout her life. And as we mentioned earlier, that's both in school and in college, which we'll talk about in the first part here. And we'll hear Jennifer's experience of that. And then a little bit later on, her experience in the workplace as well. But let's listen to part one of Seeing It Your Way with Jennifer.
This is Daniel here from the NCBI Labs, and I'm placing a call with you today where we're going to have a little discussion about Seeing It Your Way for our live event. And Jennifer, I know that you are working with the ESB as a facilities and equipment coordinator, and I'm very delighted to have you on the call today to speak to us about your experiences. So Jennifer, maybe if you want to outline for our guests a little bit about, your vision condition, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, so my vision is called Stargardt macular dystrophy, which means I have some central vision sight loss. So I use my peripheral vision to navigate around things and basically live my life.
Okay.
So very similar to age-related macular degeneration with the sight loss, but it affects more kids than anything else. So I was 12 when I was diagnosed.
Okay, so 12 years of age. So so from there, then obviously that was a big change for you, and being in school at a young age. So how did you adapt then to that coming on through school?
So in primary school, it didn't affect me much because I wasn't diagnosed until 6th class, and after that, it was that I had only a slight impairment where I'd have to sit closer to the whiteboard, and it didn't really affect my reading or writing too much at that stage. And then when I got to secondary school, I met the NCBI liaison with the Department of Education, and we did a bit of Braille once a week or whenever she arrived, and it didn't really affect me up until 6th year. So for my junior set exams, I got the allotted extra time, and I had a reader for my exam paper.
Okay.
But they were the only accommodations that I required at the time.
Right.
So I didn't need any special needs assistance until I was in 6th year, because all the way along I was getting large print books, and some of them were in Daisy format as well, if they were available in Daisy.
Right. So on the Daisy format, then did you have a laptop or something in class then to view those? Yeah,
I had a laptop. transportation of the laptop was tough because I was on my own. I had a full bag of books.
Yes.
And I had to carry it. Then I had to carry the weight of the laptop as well.
Okay.
So I didn't really bring the laptop to school too often because actually as well I had a distance magnifier glass where I could put it up in front of my eye and see the board. That was it, yeah.
Very good. And that became I suppose then your long distance aid in class.
Yeah, pretty much for a lot of my time in school, yeah. I used to carry it around my neck as well, so all the guys in the class were like, "What's that thing? Can I look at that?" It was a real conversation breaker.
Yeah, exactly. I suppose something new like that, in schools would raise people's curiosity. What is that? What do you use it for? Why do you need it?
Yeah. So like it was a good conversation starter, I have to say, thankfully. Because when you're in secondary school and you don't really know everybody at the outset, and you're just like, okay, I have something different than what you have.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
And
everyone was cool with that, sort of.
Yeah. No, they're all just happy enough then after that. So. Then sixth year came about and the Leaving Cert came about, and because the Leaving Cert then I said I need a bit of help here. I can't, like, the teachers themselves had enough of pressure on them trying to get a course finished within 2 years, and some of them felt under pressure with that. So I was like, well, I'm your student, I like to learn all this stuff, so I'm going to need a bit of extra help this year. So I applied and was successful in getting a special needs assistant for sixth year. So she took my notes during class and she typed them up actually, and she brought them in all typed up, and
that was very handy.
Yeah, so that was grand. And because I only had her for a year, the department allowed her to be my scribe and my reader for my Leaving Cert.
Excellent.
Yeah, so she was familiar with me and I was familiar with her, and it was all good.
Brilliant. So then you went on to third level in Athlone in the Midlands. And what did you study there? Yeah,
so luckily enough for me, I was accepted into Athlone IT and studied a Bachelor of Business for 4 years. So it was a bit of a change. Mm-hmm. The campus itself was quite large.
Yeah.
And much larger than just moving from one end of a school to the other. It was building to building. Yeah. Never mind hallway to hallway. So
that was quite a challenge itself, I suppose, just being, landed into this big environment, and you have to go from place to place, and navigation as well, and a whole new learning experience for you.
Yeah, so what made it a bit easier was I was able to apply for DARE, which is the Disability Access Route to Education.
Yeah.
So that application went straight to the access officer in the college. Mm-hmm. And we were able to have a meeting before I started my first year. So we just got all the needs set out, the type of technology that I was using in secondary school and how would that transfer over to third level, and all that comes with that. So yeah, so
Was there much changeover then in technology? So you were in secondary school, you were kind of using a laptop, but you weren't bringing it in as much. So when you had your monocular as well. So coming on to third level, then you sat down with the access officer, and was there much of a change up then in what technology you were going to use for the next 4 years in Athlone?
Yeah, there was. To be honest, it was it really suited my learning style.
Yeah.
They gave me what they call a note taker. So I had a note taker for my 4 years who took my notes during class.
Mm-hmm.
It was very flexible. It was a very flexible arrangement because I had a choice of whether I wanted the note taker to sit right beside me and take the notes under my instruction, or whether to sit away from me and take down everything that the lecturer was saying, and I could sit with my friends, so I wasn't causing that social barrier.
Yeah.
And what I found really great about it was the lectures were put up. Well, they were in a soft copy for a start, and then they were put up online, sometimes before the course, sometimes after the course, but most of the time it was before the lecture, I should say.
Yeah.
And I was able to download the slides onto a tablet.
Right.
And bring them to class and carry a tablet around rather than a laptop.
Well, very good. So you had a lightweight solution as opposed to the big chunky laptop that you had been familiar with before. So So in the lecture hall then, you would have had all the slides before most of the lectures going in. If there was a day then that you just didn't get the slides in time, how would you overcome that then in the lecture hall?
Well, if the slides weren't put up beforehand, you can imagine that the lecture was going to be pretty much theory based.
Yeah.
So the lecturer would do most of the talking and read out whatever was on the slide, which was great.
Right.
I also like if I started a new if I had a new lecture for a different module or whatever, I'd always go up and say it to them before they started class, and then have a chat then after they started once the lecture was over.
Yeah. Just
to say that, look, I'm in your class, I have a disability, this is what it is. Yeah. And then they were more aware.
Right. They were aware and accommodating for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's brilliant, like that you had the lecturers then on board as well, you know, and if they missed getting you the slides ahead of the lecture, that they were going to make the extra effort during the lecture to explain the slides, conscious that you were there in the audience, so to speak, and to have it explained out as best as possible for you.
Yeah, exactly. And when it came to the likes of an accounting lecture, some lecturers were better, had their notes better prepared than others. Others would do lots of practical examples during the class.
Yeah.
So when it came to that, I had to rely heavily on my note taker at the time. And just review all the notes that were taken during the class.
Right.
While the lecturer verbally explained what was going on and where figures should be displayed and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, brilliant. So overall then, it sounds like you had a good experience in third level and things went well for you. Would that be correct to say overall?
Oh yeah, definitely. I really enjoyed my time there.
That's brilliant to hear. And so when it comes to home then, right, and you know, obviously you have your hobbies and you have your things to do at home. Do you use technology then at home, or is it just strictly kind of, you know, do you just keep the technology for what you have to use it for, likes of work and study, or do you use tech at home as well?
Yeah, I use a lot of tech in my life. Yeah. It's my life support sometimes. Especially now that I'm finished college and trying to stay in contact with people and all the rest. I have a Samsung smartphone, which for me, I really prefer it because for a visually impaired person, I'm very visual.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It does.
And I like the Samsung because they have a feature on it, which is a triple tap feature.
Yeah.
And it will magnify your screen. and you don't need 3 or 4 fingers to move this magnifier around your phone like an iPhone screen.
Okay.
And so sometimes you can triple tap it with the one.
If you were listening to one of our past live events, we about a couple of weeks back, we had a kind of a little Android versus iOS debate going on, and there still rumbles on to this day. Neither side concedes the other has won. So maybe from your point of view, you're chipping one in for the Android side there.
Yeah, and what's even better is it has the same feature on their tablet, and I have a Samsung tablet as well.
Very good, very good. So I can hear, one of the guys that was on that debate is from Cork. I can hear the groans come from Cork right now as you say that. Jennifer,
yeah.
Into cycling. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I've been a nice few places with cycling. I started off cycling with Tullamore Cycling and Touring Club back when I was about to start my 3rd year of college. So that would have been around 2013.
Yeah.
And I've never looked back. The club are brilliant. I don't have any family member that does any tandem cycling or is interested in doing any sort of cycling, really. So the club have really come together, and I now have a cycling tandem pilot for the last 7 years in cruising. So last year in particular, we with the cycling club, they organised a cycling trip to Mallorca. So so I spent a week out there cycling away, even did the Sac Lovera, so I was delighted with myself. Brilliant. Yeah, so that's all I have to say about cycling, really.
Yeah, no, fair play to you. It sounds to me like, you're getting the best out of everything with your technology and your hobbies. When it comes to, let's say, socialising, you're going out shopping and getting about, how does that work for you?
Yeah, so if we're going on a day trip, shopping, like, or anything like that, I use my rollerball cane, just because, like, I might see a person coming, but it might be the reaction time might be a lot slower than if a fully sighted person was able to see someone coming at them. So I bring the cane for that reason, more so than a safety thing. When I go out with my friends at night time, out to the pubs or anything like that, whenever they decide to open, generally just phone my friends to see where they are, or ask them to come outside and meet me outside when I arrive, or whatever. And they generally just link each other rather than any of the other kinds of posts.
Yeah, very good.
So we're going to just cut into our interview there for the moment. That was certainly good to get that perspective from Jennifer Healion. We appreciate that interview, and we're going to come back to that interview just a little bit later on in the show, because in the next section Jennifer is going to be talking about some of the technology, or at least referring to it, some of the technology that she uses in the workplace. And that kind of leads us nicely into this subject of technology in the workplace, which we're just going to discuss with the panel at the moment. Obviously, just even as we heard there with the with some of the technology in school and colleges, it's kind of changed a little bit over the years, and it's interesting to see the sort of things that have made a real difference to people. But when we're talking about the workplace, maybe we could invite our panel on to discuss this, and particularly JP is going to give us a little bit of information on this. When we're talking about technology in the workplace, obviously it's kind of it's in relation to accessibility and things like this that we're focusing on. But what are some of the typical challenges that someone might face in the workplace if they have sight loss?
Sure, if you like, I can go through some of the challenges someone might face, and I have to say I loved Jennifer's quote there. Tech is my life support in the interview. I really like that. Very nicely put. So some of the typical challenges someone might face who is in employment, perhaps they've experienced some deterioration in their sight. They could be hardware or software related, really. So that's the thing, and they could be very varied according to their job role and also their eye condition. Yeah. So it could be a case, for example, that it might start off with a person maybe is starting to struggle to see certain elements on their computer screen. It could be just a mouse pointer or the cursor. When they're working on an application, it becomes a little bit tricky to see or find. Particularly, I noticed this in like, programs like Excel as well, where you're looking at spreadsheets with data on spreadsheets, which could be quite difficult. So that's in some instances. But there could also be issues around viewing presentations, for example, at team meetings. So I'm just having difficulty viewing like a whiteboard if someone's at a team meeting and they can't see that. So these kind of things can crop up. Yeah. It could also be a case where maybe a person is unable to make out some of the buttons on their work phone. So it could be something like transferring calls or holding calls. The good news is that there are solutions available. But there are some of the kind of challenges that someone might face, Jude. Yeah.
And I guess in a workplace environment, I mean, the pressures of different workplaces are different as well, but that can mean that there's more anxiety and pressure in some environments than others. And so if you're in that environment and you can't do one of the key roles just for a simple reason, just not being able to maybe see one of the...
That's exactly it. Exactly, yeah. And it means that there's added pressure on the individual to, fulfill their tasks and keep on top of their workload. That's something that I'd come across quite regularly, where maybe the person has the full ability to do their job, but unfortunately there's certain things that could be slowing them down.
Yes. Yeah. So that can be quite an anxious thing.
Absolutely.
A lot to it. So you mentioned there that the good news is that there are sort of solutions to it. So what sort of, if we're talking about IT, for example, what sort of IT support is there?
Okay, so the good news is there are solutions available. And I suppose the first thing to point out is that there's NCBI technology staff can provide assistance in, I suppose, just trying to work out like what equipment, and that's both software and hardware, could be put in place for someone in the workplace to make it more accessible for them. So that's the good news. So the way it would work is that if someone is having some experience, some difficulty doing their job role, they can make contact with ourselves, and we have an employment advisor, Dennis Daly, who I believe will be joining us on a future live event, and they can make contact with him. Now there's two, I suppose, two options here. If someone is job seeking, we can, through Dennis, they can be given advice around CV preparation, cover letters, interview skills, disclosure, all these kind of things. But if someone is in the job and maybe there's an issue around job retention, they can also get advice about that. It could be a case where they might be redeployed to another area, that kind of thing.
Yes.
And in terms of the IT, where the IT comes in, well, they can speak with Dennis and they can have a meeting with him, and then they can get referred to an IT trainer for an IT assessment. And generally speaking, this will take place at an NCBI office. Occasionally, it'll take place in the workplace if it's required. Yeah. So on the back of this, what we would do is we compile an assessment report. That will outline the different technologies that could benefit a person at a particular given time, must be stressed. So it could be a case where maybe a person's sight might change over a number of months. So that's just at that particular time. So we kind of put the note into the report. After that, we can provide the quotations for the equipment required, and we can also give them information about maybe funding options that may be available. And of course, the support doesn't stop there. We make sure that if there's any ongoing issues, they can contact us by phone or by email. And on occasion, we may need to call out to the workplace to give them support there too.
Yeah. Very good. That's kind of a good overview of the process of the support that's there.
Yeah.
Could I pick up on a couple of things that you mentioned? So you're talking about maybe an IT assessment, and you're looking at equipment or products that might be particularly useful to somebody. What sort of equipment could we be talking about here that would be
So the things that I would typically come across, very varied, as they call it, depending on the person's condition or their job role, of course. Kind of things we're looking at would be electronic handheld magnifiers. So I know we haven't discussed them in the show yet, but I'm sure a lot of our listeners will be familiar with these. These are lightweight and portable low vision devices. You can carry them around very, very easily, and you can put them in a handbag or just take them with you in a backpack, that kind of thing. I've come across these to be very useful in of call centers where maybe people are dealing with paperwork, and I mentioned earlier that occasionally it could be difficult for someone to see the keypad on their work phone. So they can just take out their handheld magnifier for quick reference and then put it back in, that kind of thing. That's one example. There's also CCTVs, or closed circuit televisions, which is similar to the handheld magnifiers, low vision equipment which have a built-in camera, and they can be used, for example, to work with hard copy printouts and that kind of thing. So if you're not just 100% working with your laptop or desktop computer, and if you're given materials like papers to work with, then the CCTVs can be useful. The only downside with the CCTVs is that they do require quite a lot of desk space. Generally speaking, you don't move the CCTVs around, they're too heavy. So that's where something like a Connect 12 could come into play. So this is an electronic magnifier. It's portable. It's an Android tablet, a 12-inch Android tablet, and you can use it to access all the Android apps that you want as well. So you actually use it personally as well. You could have your Gmail app, your Chrome app, and everything on this.
So just to kind of draw the comparison between the two there, CCTVs and the Connect 12, you've got one is quite a big thing, as you mentioned. It's heavy. You want to be
it's standalone. Exactly.
The Connect 12 that you mentioned there as an Android tablet. There's a framework as well to that. Is there's some way of sort of setting it up to be hands-free?
There is, exactly. That's a really good point. So you can actually take this out of the case. You can use it as a stand where you can actually read your hard copy print materials beneath the camera, but you can actually take it out, and it can be portable as a handle with the Connect 12, and you can bring it with you between meetings. It's used a lot in education, so we'll come across a lot of students who would bring it class to class, and they can bring it home as well. But it could be used, I've come across it certainly in the workplace, I've come across it where it can be used when attending meetings and presentations, because you can purchase with the Connect 12 a distance viewing camera, which I think is up to 25 times magnification. Really good clarity with this camera. I think it's a Canon, and you can view presentations in the back of the screen on the could be a slideshow showing. So I have seen people who are using this in the workplace and having great benefit from it, from bringing it into meetings and being able to see what's on the screen in front of them.
That's quite a high quality camera. It
is very popular, particularly in education, as I say, but people are using it in employment too. And
just as a small thing that you mentioned there about the Connect 12 being portable and folding down, you use a handle. What sort of size are you talking about once it folds down? Is it it's still a fairly hefty piece of equipment?
It's great. It's a 12-inch tablet, so that's what you're working with. It's lightweight as well, so it's very, very light as well to use. But I showed this to someone who recently was secured employment. I think it was a public sector role, but they showed it to them and they were delighted. They were literally jumping up and down on the spot. They were absolutely thrilled with this, because they were used to seeing the CCTVs that I mentioned earlier. And I said, you're not going to be bringing these around from office to office, particularly if someone's role involves a bit of travel. But they were delighted with the Connect 12. It's extremely portable.
And even the framework of the stand sort of folds down into its own space, doesn't it? So it's not much bigger than the 12-inch tablet.
That's it, effectively. Exactly. It's smaller rim around it, but that's it.
Frame,
so bringing a laptop.
Also protects it while it's on the move as well, because it is made out of kind of a metal that offers a protection. So it is very suitable for portability.
Yeah. Very good. And anything else that would be used for commonly used in the workplace?
There would be things that would come across as well would be screen magnification software. So I know we've discussed to some degree, we've talked about screen magnification software before. I know we're looking at it again in the future live event, like software like Zoom Text and Supernova, particularly Zoom Text. Generally speaking, during the initial assessment, what we would do is we would show the built-in accessibility features. So with Windows 10, like your Windows magnifier, because they can be pretty powerful sometimes. They might, meet a person's requirements. But so we would show the accessibility features built in first, and then would show the likes of Zoom Text and Supernova. As I say, mainly Zoom Text, and we'll find that Zoom Text could be particularly useful for people who maybe find the mouse pointer quite difficult to find on the screen, or people want a bit of speech, the speech element in Zoom Text Magnifier Reader, accompanied with the magnification that the software provides. I actually know some people who are using Zoom Text in the workplace who use it purely for the mouse pointer and cursor enhancements. So
interesting.
They don't use speech; they just want to be able to see the mouse pointer and use it for that reason.
Yeah.
And then I suppose it's kind of just moving on. Then, if it's a case, and I have come across situations where maybe someone is finding the Zoom Text, it was working to a point, and maybe they're increasing the magnification to a certain level. Maybe it could be 6 or 7 point magnification or more, and it's actually just, they might just find it's slowing them down a bit, and that's where the screen reader software could come in. And this is where something like using JAWS, mostly JAWS. Could come into play as their screen reader of choice when they're working with applications like Outlook or Word or whatever it is in work. So, and
that's important to mention as well, because some of the other things that we've kind of mentioned are ones for low vision, but the screen reader software does kind of provide another level of support there, doesn't it?
It does exactly. And I think some people are kind of willing to embrace that. They've tried the magnification for a set time and maybe it no longer works for them, so they'll try try JAWS, try the screen reader, and in the long run it just pays dividends. It can speed things up. If someone has good touch typing skills, something like JAWS can work really well for them.
Very good.
I suppose, go ahead, sorry Jude.
Can I just pick up on something else you mentioned earlier? You did say as well that there was maybe advice on grants and things, kind of if somebody's listening to some of these suggestions of equipment and things like that, and they're thinking, well, how do we actually manage to get a hold of these? What sort of grants are there?
Okay, so for someone who is in the private sector, they can avail of the Workplace Equipment Adaptation Grant. So this provides funding for someone who has a sight impairment and is either in employment or who is maybe at a position where they're in full or part-time employment, or they can be self-employed. So it is, as I say, strictly in the private sector or for people who are self-employed. A different avenue for people who are in public sector, which I can discuss in a little bit. But so for the Workplace Equipment Grant, though, you can apply for funding up to the value of €6,300, and this could be for software such as JAWS screen reader, Zoom Text, which I mentioned a moment ago, or even some of the likes of the Connect 12 or some of the handheld electronic magnifiers.
Speaking of which, just before you continue, sorry to interrupt there, but somebody just asks here just a rough idea of the cost of Connect 12. Do we have a rough idea of that? We mightn't have it directly to hand, but I'm sure we can find it.
And I'm sure we can get that shortly. Yeah. Great. We'll have a look at that. We have a price list which we can check.
Yeah. So we'll come back to that one then, maybe in a little bit. Sorry, I interrupted you there. Go ahead.
No. So this is just in relation to applying for the Workplace Equipment Grant. So I say for people who are eligible, you could be in employment, either full-time or part-time in the private sector. You could be self-employed and you might need some adaptations to your workplace or your equipment. As I mentioned, the grant is worth just over €6,300. €6,350 is available toward the cost of adapting or purchasing equipment. And the good news as well is that I have come across cases where maybe someone will seek funding through the workplace grant for a particular product or software, but maybe it only accounts for maybe half of that amount or less. And the question is sometimes we're asked is, well, can I apply again? Like, how long can I wait for I have to apply again? The answer to that is, you can apply again, if you wish. There's no limit. You don't have to spend it all at once, so to speak. You can apply over the, of course, because of course, maybe a new product might arrive in the market that you might want to use, and you can apply for that as well. So yeah, you can do it that way.
And is there any other kind of information that somebody would need then about the grant process or anything like that?
Yes, yeah. Just in terms of how you can apply. So the way it works is that you can you need to fill out 2 forms that are available from I think it's the Department of Social Welfare, the welfare site, and you will complete these forms, and then you'll bring them into your local social welfare branch or Intrio office. And 2 forms are very straightforward to fill out. You fill out your details. It could be pretty much your contact details, PPS, the nature of your visual impairment. And the second form, the requirement is to fill out why and how this technology could benefit you in the workplace. And the last thing then is that you will need to provide some quotations for the adaptive software hardware. If it's a case where I think it's over €700, you'll need 2 quotes. If the total cost of the equipment being sought for is over €1,500, you'll need 3 quotes. So that's the way it works. You complete the 2 forms. I believe Form 2 will need to be stamped by your accounts department, and then you will bring it into your social welfare branch office, your local branch office, and then the case officer, should be in touch with you from the Department of Social Protection and meet with you to review the application. So actually, it's interesting. We had I had a meeting with a case officer a short while ago from a local social welfare branch office, and she was actually making the point that not many people are either aware of this or applying for it. So maybe some people are not conscious that the workplace grant is actually available.
So good to let people know about that, and even just the process as well, because I think sometimes if it's a really daunting, complex process, people can get a little bit worried, but it's nice to have it outlined there and to know where to get the support.
Exactly. And just to finish off, I did mention that the workplace grant is specifically for people who are in the private sector or self-employed. If you are in the public sector, you can make contact with a disability officer, or the relative department in your workplace. So, for example, I would regularly receive queries from school teachers about applying for funding there, and that would be through the Department of Education.
Yeah, very good. Very good. So that's good to include that as well. And we did get a little bit of information there on the cost of the Connect 12. I think Sean found the information just there for us. So about 2,800 without the camera, 3,345 with the camera, and that's including VAT. But then the VAT can be
reclaimed. That's a very good point, actually. Yeah. Exactly.
So that's brilliant information. Thanks very much for taking us through that, JP. Appreciate that. And it's such an important subject as well, because as we mentioned at the start of this piece, it can cause an awful lot of stress and difficulty if somebody, particularly if you've kind of worked to be qualified for something, and then a very almost like a minor element of the role becomes an insurmountable obstacle. That's a really stressful thing. But the great thing is that it's not insurmountable. There's so many solutions there, so it's great to discuss that as well. Thanks a lot for that, JP. Just coming back to what we were talking about earlier, maybe we could just ask Sean to unmute there for a moment. We just had one other question come in. It's not directly in relation to the announcements last week, but just in relation to VoiceOver, using the VoiceOver shortcut. When you have a home button, you can kind of triple tap on the home button. But what about the iPhones that don't have a home button?
Well, that's a very good question. You do the same thing where you navigate to your accessibility settings and you navigate to accessibility shortcut and you pick which shortcut you want to turn on. So in this case, VoiceOver. Yeah. So obviously there's no home button to triple tap then, so we substitute that for the power button.
Oh, okay.
So we triple tap the power button, which would then toggle VoiceOver on and off. And then just because without the home button being there, a swipe up from the bottom quickly will be like pressing the home button, where that'll bring you to the home screen. And if you swipe up slowly until you hear 2 taps or two noise indicators, that'll bring up your app changer, your app switcher.
Yeah,
You could also use Siri to activate it.
Yeah, that's kind of handy. But good to know, because that is one of the questions that people ask when they've got used to a home button. It's important to have those other ways to do it as well. Thanks a lot for clearing that up, Sean. Very good. So we've had a bit of a chat about technology in the workplace, and that continues to be part of the Seeing It Your Way interview that Daniel carried out with Jennifer Healion. So we're going to rejoin that interview now. We're going to go back to the second part of Seeing It Your Way with Jennifer Healion.
As mentioned earlier, you're with the ESB and you're getting on great there from all accounts. And sticking with navigation, to commute in and out of work. And I also understand that you started in Finglas, which is quite a bit away from your neighbourhood of Tullamore, and that you now work in Portlaoise. So maybe you want to explain, how the commute works for you in the early days.
Yeah, so as you mentioned there, I started working with ESB Networks in 2015. I finished college May 2015 and managed to land myself a job in October.
Wow, that was brilliant. Okay.
I haven't looked back. So that was all thanks to my local NCBI community worker pointing me in the direction of the employability midline function of the HSE for people with disabilities. And they put me in touch with AHEAD. Mm-hmm. And through AHEAD, I managed to do an interview for ESB Networks in their customer service and distribution, as it was at the time, the section in Finglas. So that was interesting enough. It was a three-person panel of an interview with the ESB access officer, my future supervisor, and a HR representative.
Right.
So that was great. I think what really helped my case was I actually brought my handheld magnifier into the interview with me and showed them how this would help me do my job if I was successful.
Very good.
And of course, all my other experiences as well.
Brilliant.
So
you went to, as I say, a little step above in the interview just to clinch it.
Yeah. So thankfully I was successful. So I started working in Finglas in October 2015.
Yes.
So I stayed there for a month of a 6-month paid work placement for AHEAD.
Okay.
So it was, and initially it was a month. So I had family up there at the time, so I stayed with them for the month, and then they transferred me to the local area office in Tullamore for the remainder of the 6-month contract.
Oh, very good.
So that was great. Great staying local and all the rest. And I
with family and friends again, it'd be good.
Yeah. So I was well looked after from a commuting point of view there. And then, so February of 2016, they advertised externally for a contract of 3 years.
Lovely. So
I interviewed for that. Same again, 3-person panel, and the advantage I had was it was for a role in the team that I was already in.
Okay.
So yeah, at the time they advertised for 2 positions. So I got one, and another lady got the second.
Lovely. So you had the experience of already working a bit in Tullamore.
Exactly.
And to I suppose cement your place there with another interview. And well done to you. And did you bring the handheld magnifier to the second interview?
No, I didn't bring it to the second interview. I felt like the panel would know would evaluate my work rather than my person to fit the job at that stage.
Brilliant. And so you're in Portlaoise now. So did you go from Tullamore then down to Portlaoise?
No, what happened was the 3-year contract was to be based full-time in the Finglas office.
Okay.
So in May of 2016, I started the role in Finglas, and I commuted by train, Lewis and bus.
Wow.
To Finglas for 3 years. Or sorry, not 3 years. A year and a half.
Okay, so still a good substantial amount of time too. So you were getting on the train in Tullamore and into Houston.
Yeah, train from Tullamore to Houston, and then I would normally get the 145 bus from the front of Houston Station to Delire Street. Yeah. I don't know whether you can still do that because it's the whole Cross City Lewis.
Yeah.
And then I would change buses from Delire Street to Westmoreland Street.
Yeah.
And get the 140 bus out to Finglas, and luckily enough there was a bus stop outside the ESB office, so I only had to walk across the road.
Oh, lovely. But still that is some going. And how long each way was the commute?
Roughly you'd have to allow for 2 hours each way.
Each way, so 4 hours then altogether on top of your working day.
Yeah.
Quite a long haul for a year and a half. So eventually then you come back to Portlaoise.
Yeah, so I interviewed for my current role as Facilities and Equipment Coordinator in the ESB Network Training Centre, Portlaoise, in August of 2016.
Yeah.
And I was successful there. Again, 3-person panel. The Networks Training Centre is a standalone business unit within ESB Networks. So it's a lot leaner from the lower tier to the senior manager.
Right.
And I didn't realise at the time, but the senior manager was on the interview panel with me that day.
Right.
Yeah, so along with my own manager now and a HR representative as well. So
very good.
Yeah, so that was a nice surprise to get on your first day there.
Yeah. But obviously you were impressed because you're based in Portlaoise now. And you're working away there. And when it comes to carrying out your role now in Portlaoise, and I suppose with a focus on technology, what do you what technology are you using? Are you still with the handheld magnifier, or have you more stuff as well?
To be honest, I moved away from the handheld magnifier.
Yeah.
I just felt like it wasn't doing the job I needed it to. It was good for the smaller documents, but it wasn't so good for a large document.
Yeah.
So what I have now is I have 2 large screens, monitors I should say.
Yeah.
And I use the Supernova software for magnification. I don't really use it for the screen reader too often.
Yeah.
I only really need the screen reader when there's a PDF, a heavy PDF, probably about 20 pages before I need to use that.
Okay.
Because most of my work is based around emails and phone calls, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
You're kind of going between the screen and the phone, so you get a little bit away from the screen.
I also have a CCTV called a Prisma. And what's good about the Prisma is that it connects into one of the monitors.
Yes.
So that I don't need an extra standalone unit.
Right. So yeah, your computer screen and your Prisma are kind of interlinked in a way up to the one screen.
Yes. So I can switch between the two. I can either use a second screen for work, I suppose, viewing different windows, or I could use it for the Prisma solely.
Brilliant. So that saves a bit of desk space as well, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And is there any other technologies then that you use? You have your Prisma, you have your Supernova on the screen. Is there the handheld magnifier is nearly redundant? There's nothing else you use?
Yeah, nearly redundant. Yeah, because what about the handheld magnifier is that it nearly zooms in by letter, rather than by word, because of the proximity to the page.
Yeah.
So it's good for the likes of if you were stuck reading a person's posted or something like that.
Yeah.
But if you're reading a letter or a bank statement or something like that, you're better off having.
Okay.
Because you can see the full page you can display the full page on the bottom, like underneath the Prisma camera.
Yeah.
And then if you're looking for a specific section, like if someone had something highlighted, like I could mark that with my finger and then just zoom in on my finger and I'll find what that word actually was.
Brilliant. So
yeah, I also have the Supernova keyboard, the large
button keyboard with the large letters.
Yeah. That's the one.
Very good. And obviously that helps you out with the typing as well. Well, I presume from the line of work you're an avid typist. But then obviously I suppose if you do have to reference the keyboard, it's handy to have the sometimes the keyboard shortcuts, finding your Control and V or Control and C. Yes.
It's easier. And also it has shortcuts for the Supernova controls as well on the top of it. So if something comes in and it's larger than what I would normally see, I can zoom out pretty quickly rather than trying to go and find the control panel and gauge it that way.
Yeah. So you have these quick access buttons across the top.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So it sounds like you're getting on brilliant there in DSB, and all this technology, like it's empowering you to do your job, and every bit as good as a fully sighted person. And obviously you're getting on well. You're there in the role a while now. Just commuting over and back from Portlaoise, then how is that working for you? Rural transport.
Yeah. So there is a local bus company called Townlink, and thankfully they run a good and regular bus service between Tullamore and Portlaoise.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm able to grab the bus at 8 o'clock in Tullamore and be in work for 9 o'clock in Portlaoise, with the help of meeting one of my colleagues in Portlaoise town centre and just grabbing a lift up to the office building with them.
Okay, which I understand. I know Portlaoise, it's about half a mile of a hop from the bus stop out to the ESB centre on the motorway road there.
Yeah, it would be. So it's about at most a 5-minute drive in the van, but if you were to walk it would be probably about 20 minutes.
It would, and on the wet mornings you definitely don't want that.
No.
Jennifer, listen, it's been brilliant talking to you. About how you've come up through school and through third level. Getting a job in Dublin, back to Tullamore, down to Portlaoise, and everything is working out brilliant for you. And from listening to you speak, like, technology is certainly a big portion of your life, from communications and work, and even with a bit of navigation as well. So, is there anything else you want to add to that, or that we didn't quite touch on?
I suppose we didn't really touch on the voice assistant from Google Home and other technology that I have.
Yes, this is Home, yeah. The Samsung tablet.
Yeah.
And then you have the Google Assistant. Have you looked at speaker?
I have a Google Home speaker, yeah, so I love it. I really love it. I love asking it the time. I love asking it different web searches. To be honest, it's made everything so much quicker and easier for me.
Yeah.
Like, if I want to find out like how long it'll take me to travel somewhere, I can ask the Google Home speaker or ask the Google Assistant on my phone, and it'll bring back an answer. Very small percentage of the time, it'll be a completely different answer than what I want.
Yeah.
But I have to say, the majority of the time, I'm very happy with it.
Yeah.
I also have a voice-enabled smart TV,
yeah,
which is great because I don't know about you, but around my house, it's very hard to find a remote control sometimes.
Yeah.
It could be down the middle of the couch somewhere or whatever. But I can activate the television, and even from a standby mode, I can ask it to turn on. I can do the volume controls and things like that. So, yeah.
Wow, that's sounds. What make a TV is that? I wouldn't mind doing those myself.
It's Samsung.
Samsung all the way. Brilliant. Just out of curiosity, you mentioned the Google Assistant on the phone. Do you ask it to ring people and text people and WhatsApp people for you?
Yeah, all those things.
Yeah.
I even have a smart bulb in my bedroom.
Oh yeah.
And I do that's connected to my Google Home, which is connected to my phone, and I can ask it to turn off at night time.
So you don't have to get out and turn off the light switch.
So I don't have to get out of bed.
Brilliant. Jennifer, listen, it's been a pleasure speaking with you, and thank you so much for coming on to the NCBI Labs live event and sharing your experiences with us. And it's been a very interesting listen. I'm sure our audience will agree. So with that, I want to thank you, and we'll probably touch base again and see how you're getting on. And don't forget, if you do have difficulty with any technology, to get in touch with your local NCBI training and support personnel. So thank you once again, Jennifer.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Very good. So that was Jennifer Healion talking to Daniel Dunn there, and that was quite a wide-ranging interview, talking about all sorts of ways that technology has been of assistance throughout her life, both in school and college, and in work and outside of work as well. And that was certainly very informative. So thanks very much to Jennifer Healion for sharing her experience with us. And that about wraps it up for today. Just a couple of reminders before we finish up. Just obviously any of the things that we speak about on our live events here, you can always get further support for any of these pieces of technology or any of the things we've spoken about here. If you want to get in touch using our technology support line, you can do that 9 to 5 Monday to Friday on 1850 92 30 60. That's 1850 92 30 60, or you can email labs@ncbi.ie. And of course, if you want broader support from NCBI, you can contact our national helpline on 1850 33 43 53, or you can email info@ncbi.ie. That's info@ncbi.ie. And as we mentioned earlier, if you'd like to support us, you can visit donate.ncbi.ie, or you can even sponsor one of our live events by contacting us on our labs email address, labs@ncbi.ie. So that pretty much wraps it up for today. But there's still plenty of things that we haven't been able to cover so far in our live events. There's always more to cover, and in the coming weeks we're going to be talking about a few different subjects: Supernova, Zoom Text, those sort of programs that we mentioned earlier, pieces of software that can be really useful in a number of different environments, both for enhancing the visual aspect of what's on a computer screen, or feeding back in audio as well. So we'll be having a look at that in the coming weeks. We'll also hopefully get back to Stuart Lawler in our Seeing It Your Way piece in one of the coming weeks. We'll be talking about Braille technology as well. That'll be one of the subjects that we'll be speaking about very soon. And we'll also have a look at some of the typing tutors that was mentioned before as a really key way of making sure that you can access various supports and services through your computer is by using your keyboard. So a typing tutor can be very useful for that as well. So I hope you've enjoyed the show today. My thanks to Daniel and JP and Sean as well, and of course to Jennifer Healion for sharing her experience with us as well. And of course, thank you for listening to this week's show, and we hope you can join us again next week for another NCBI Labs live event.